Alrighty, let's get this party started. Welcome to the next webinar in our Parenting Complex Kids webinar series. Today, Kate Arms is bringing us Effective Advocacy 101 for parents of gifted and twice exceptional kids. Advocacy is a pretty big deal when you have these amazing kids who are so far out of the box, they don't recognize there is one. And getting them the help they need is sometimes difficult to do. So Kate is going to walk us through advocacy. That is something we all need to learn and have under our belt, have the right code words, and be able to do right by our kids. So with that, Kate, I'm going to hand it on over to you and let you take on from there.
Okay, great. Welcome and thank you for joining us, whether you are here live or watching the recording. I know that when we're parenting gifted and twice exceptional kids, getting time on Friday during the day is not always easy, if possible at all. So for those of you watching the recording, yay for taking the time out of your personal time to do that. This is Advocacy 101, so it's going to be really high level. Hopefully you'll get something useful in the way of principles. At the end, there'll be time for questions for those of you who are here live. So if you've got specific questions, that will be an opportunity for us to do them. If you've got questions, put them in the Q&A box, and that way you don't have to worry about them while I'm talking, and either Jen or Chris or I will notice maybe time for interrupting me, but certainly when we get to the end of the presentation. For those of you who do not know me, there's me again, so now you have me double time. My name is Kate Arms. I am a coach and leadership development consultant. I work with Signal Fire Coaching, and I do coaching and training on emotional, social, and relationship intelligence skills for people at work, at home, and in their own heads. And I have a particular passion for gifted and twice exceptional adults and children because I'm twice exceptional and my kids are gifted and twice exceptional. So I know what I'm talking about from a practical perspective as well as a professional perspective. I am trained as, but not practicing as, a lawyer. You might have caught the JD on my name in the previous slide. And that doesn't end up being particularly relevant to what I do professionally very often, but it certainly helps in the advocacy work I do with regard to my kids. Let me just sort of dive in and see what I have to share with you. First, a definition of advocacy. Advocacy is the act or process of supporting a cause or a proposal. So for us, the cause is our kids. It's about the active process of supporting our kids. And exactly what that looks like, I'm going to get into a little bit, but I want to talk first about how I think of advocacy, because it may not be quite the same way as other people do. And it may not be the way that you've thought about it in the past. I think of advocacy as a form of leadership through persuasion. So we have a position that we're trying to get other people to join us in implementing. That's what advocacy is really about. And so it requires leadership. And leadership requires meeting people where they are, building a relationship of trust, and helping them to see the benefit to them of doing what you want done. I want to say that again because it's actually super important. Advocacy requires helping other people see the benefit to them of doing what you want done. So whether that's a teacher at school, or your kids trying a new technique for something, or a school district adopting a new policy. Unless you have a sledgehammer over somebody's head, and we'll talk a little bit but just a little bit about how you might use a sledgehammer over somebody's head by getting the law involved if the law is on your side. And we're going to talk a little bit about why you might want not to do that too. But unless you've got a sledgehammer to hold over somebody's head, the most effective form of advocacy is to get them to decide for themselves that they want to do the same thing that you want them to do. And so that's what I'm going to focus on for this presentation. So the first thing you need to ask yourself in terms of advocating for gifted and twice exceptional kids is, what is your goal? Is your goal to have the best outcome for your kid right now, or is it to change the system? Changing the system has bigger impact, but it also is harder to do and takes longer and may not actually affect your kid directly in the time frame in which they are in school. On the other hand, it may be the only way to get the best outcome for your kid, to change the system. So figuring out which of those is your goal and which is most important is going to have an impact on what kind of advocacy you need to be doing. If your goal is the best outcome for your kid, then what you're talking about is working within the system, getting accommodations, and working with your kid to make lemonade. So this is the if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Working with the system is a combination of what can get the system to do for you and how can you get your kid to adapt to what is or is not possible in the system. If you're looking at the best outcome for your kid, you also need to have a backup plan outside the system or a backup plan within the system. So a backup plan within the system might be sue the system. If the law is on your side and the school isn't doing it, that's a backup plan. But you might also have in your mind homeschooling, alternative schools, private options, doing some kind of online schooling from home rather than what you can get done in the school. The backup plan is really important. In legal negotiation terms, this is your best alternative to a negotiated solution. Your BATNA. The thing about this is, if you know what your backup plan is, anything that you are offered in a negotiation that is not as good as your backup plan, you want to walk away from. Anything that is better than your backup plan, you might do well to accept it for now and work on trying to make the next step later. Because lots of this stuff has to be done incrementally. If your goal is to change the system, then you're talking about coalition building with other parents, lobbying, public activism, and serious data gathering. This is the most impactful way of working if what you want to do is change the system. It is slow, requires a lot of people, and requires advocacy in each of these areas. If this is what you want to do, you need to start getting allies who are other parents who want to change the system, and teachers and employers on your side as soon as possible. But you get to decide, what is my goal? The level of advocacy tells you sort of how much power you have, how much you have to do coalition building, how much you have to change the system. If you're just trying to have this teacher implement these things because your kid needs them right now, you actually have quite a lot of power because your kid is in the classroom having behaviors that impact that teacher right now. And you're only one of somewhere between 20 and 35, depending on the school district and how big the classes are, parents of kids that the teacher is dealing with. In the school, you're a smaller fish. In the whole system, you're an even smaller fish. So if you can have impact at the teacher level, it doesn't last as long because it only works for this one school year, but you're more likely, if you can build this kind of relationship, to have a quick impact. All right, so how do we do this thing? Well, the first thing is we have to acknowledge that it's hard. And why is advocacy so hard? And it's not because the system is stacked against us, and it's not because the people that we're working with are idiots or don't want to help. It's because we have a hard time self-managing. We care so damn much that every single conversation we have, every time we think about it, our threat assessment is sky high, because these are our kids that we're talking about. These are our kids, and we just care. And the stakes are so high because we think, not incorrectly, that the experiences our kids have now are going to have ramifications for the rest of their lives. Time feels short. If we're negotiating with a teacher on assignments that they've already given, panic. This is already in place. If we don't get something done now, what is going to happen to my kid? But on a bigger level, even if we feel like it's okay for now, we've only got 17, 18, 19, if our kids are really slow to launch, 25 years with these kids, and then they're going to spend the rest of their lives on their own without us right there helping them out. And we want them to be as well prepared for that as possible. So that's pressure. That ups our panic mode. And we don't have enough information. We don't start out trying to advocate for our kids, whether it's at school or in their extracurricular activities. We don't know the systems. We come in having to find our way through. And not having information scares us. We feel out of control. So fundamentally, advocacy is so hard because we feel under threat the whole time. And our fight, flight, freeze responses are engaged. So we care. That's the shorthand. Why it's so hard is we care. And the first part of effective advocacy is self-management. We have to get our threat level assessment down and our sense of competence up so that we can be creative and responsive and actually engage in advocacy in real time based on persuasive relationships and trying to lead people to where we want them to go. So, 5 questions that you want to answer as part of figuring out how to be your best self, your most persuasive self, when you go into an advocacy situation. These are great journaling questions, and I highly recommend that you come back to them over and over again as the process of trying to get things in place for your kids progresses through the years, because it's not going to stop. Who am I at my most persuasive? When people want to follow you, who are you? How are you being? What is it that they find most compelling about you and most persuasive about you? You may not be able to articulate this for yourself. Couple of ways that you can get some help on this. One is ask people who respect you and are inspired by you in your personal life, who am I when I'm most persuasive? Like what am I doing, or what's going on with me when you most want to follow me and say yes to my suggestions? There's also a quiz you can take. Sally Hogshead, she sells this to people who are marketing their own businesses, but it's a quiz you can take to get a sense of who you are. Anyway, it's called How to Fascinate, or Fascinate. I can't quite remember exactly what the website is, but if you Google Sally Hogshead Fascinate, you will get up to a self-assessment quiz. How do I recover when I get hooked? This is actually really powerful. When you get hooked, triggered, overwhelmed, emotionally flooded, how can you quickly recover? Now, this is something to start paying attention to when you are irritated or slightly upset or frustrated, and seeing what helps you then, because the things that help you then are going to be the things that you want to call on when you get really hooked emotionally. And it may be things like taking a deep breath or taking a step back or excusing yourself and go to the bathroom and coming to, but it may also be some cognitive processing ideas. And so the next three things are cognitive things that might help you recover when you get hooked. The other thing that I really like to suggest about how do I recover when I get hooked is, if you know who you are at your most persuasive and you come up with a stance or a gesture or a sound, but a movement is really good for who you are at your most persuasive, a symbol that's physical can then be something that you do to recover when you get hooked. So if this is my gesture, I don't want to do that in a meeting, but under my table, like you can't see this because it's under the camera, I can do that with my hands, and I can find my posture, and I can connect in with who I am at my most persuasive. So finding a full body gesture and then making a small version that you can do under the table in the meeting is a really powerful tool you can take in to recover when you are hooked emotionally. The cognitive pieces you might write on a notepad that you take into a meeting. What am I most committed to? So are you committed to this particular accommodation for your kid? Or are you committed to my kid being engaged in school, my kid feeling good about themselves, my kid not wasting their time, my kid not having a meltdown? What am I most committed to? And the more abstract that is, the more you have room to negotiate the details of accommodations. You may or may not have good options. Depending on what your kids' needs are, there may be very, very narrow accommodations that are going to serve the purpose. One of the things you might want to be committed to that helps in advocacy is maintaining a good relationship with the people I am talking to. Maintaining a good relationship with the administrators, maintaining a good relationship with the teacher. My kid needs to be in this teacher's classroom for the next year. I don't want my teacher to hate me because they might take it out on my kid. How do I remember what is most important? Maybe you wear a piece of jewelry that is a reminder. You have a necklace that you finger, have a specific watch that you wear, have a rock that you put in your pocket that you finger when you're nervous. How do I remember what is important? What do I believe about effective processes? Now, this is really powerful sometimes. Sometimes if you can't get away from being stressed about the outcome, what I believe about effective processes can keep you in the conversation being creative. Effective processes have people aligned, looking at a problem, not looking at the people. That's something I believe that keeps me on track. Don't make up something, use something that you already believe. So One thing that you can do for self-management if you're going into a high-stress negotiation is you can actually take a piece of paper in that these little notes are part of what you have at the top. Like your little personal agenda for the meeting is actually to manage yourself this way. Time feels short. How can we manage the fact that our time feels short? The first thing is that there is more time than you think. There is always more time than you think. Kids are resilient. They are creative. They develop on their own time. If you focus on their whole person, you might find more options than if you focus on just this thing that we're worried about right now. And you can create a little bit of space in a sense that there's patience and there's time if you start finding your agency and your kids' agency in whatever's happening right now while you're trying to work on changing it. And a couple of great questions to ask yourself to help you find that space and that sense that time is not as short as you're afraid. What can they create from what exists right now? How can you guys suck the marrow out of what is existing right now, even if it's not great? What are they learning? What can they take from this situation? What can you take from this situation that you can actually move forward with? And then ask, what are you afraid of? And then what can you do to help combat that fear while you're also proceeding on this advocacy and negotiation? So it's not that you're giving up on the advocacy, but it's that you've got parallel paths. Giving yourself this sense of patience enables you to just tone down the fear. That gets your creativity online and makes it easier for you to relate to people in a way that makes them want to help you. And remember, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the other people to want to do what we want them to do. So if they want to help you, that's a good step. Now, lack of information is a real problem in advocating for our kids in school districts and in school settings. So we do actually need to take responsibility before we come into meetings to reduce our lack of information as much as we possibly can, and to be willing in those meetings to look like fools and ask questions, because we do actually need to have information. We need to have information about our kids, about what our kids' needs really are, and we also need local knowledge about the system that we're trying to get change made in. What are the real limitations in the school district? What are the financial constraints that they're running under? Who are the players? Who has power and authority? What resources are they just not going to be able to get access to? We need to know what the law in our jurisdiction is. We need to have that because we need to know what we're entitled to, what we're asking for that we're not necessarily entitled to, even if it's what would be best for our kids, as we think. And we may not want to dance the dance of, here is the law and we're willing to sue you if you don't fulfill your obligations. But we do want to know what that is in case we decide to play that card. Playing that card puts their threat assessment up, and if we can get away without playing that card, we want to, because our kids are in relationship with the people we're negotiating with, and we don't want them to hate us, and we don't want them to take it out on our kids. But if we need to play that card, we need to know what it is and whether it's actually one to play. So actually talking to a lawyer is sometimes a thing you want to do, but you may not want to, you may not need to. What have other people found effective in your district? Connecting any way you can with people who've already been through it in your district is incredibly powerful. because they will know answers to things like what discretion do teachers, administrators, and other personnel resources have? What documentation is recognized within the system? And what can't people tell you about that you could ask for? This is really, really important. There are things that teachers can't tell parents because they'll get in trouble with their unions. And their unions are doing this to protect them, but they can't tell parents because they are otherwise at risk of being drawn into lawsuits that will distract them from their teaching. So lots of the things that we can ask about, they can't tell us about. And so finding out from other people who've been there, done that in your school district or in nearby school districts or in similar systems is really useful. So finding local people, finding online people who are not local but have gone through similar things that might give you things that you can, ideas of questions you can ask, connect with them. This gets to the huge, huge piece that is really part of your foundation before you go into a communication. You need allies. And you need to build alliances. So who's available as an alliance? There may be agencies in your area that have people available to be advocates, special needs resources who can come in and help you navigate the system. You need to know who your friends and family members are that you can talk to, that you can vent, so you can clear things out of your system so that you can process your own emotions separately from being in the meeting, because one of the things that's effective about advocacy is addressing the needs of the people you're talking to. And you might need help with your own self-management, being able to put your fears and concerns aside long enough to be able to look at the problem from their perspective. So your friends, other parents. Now, you might want a lawyer on your team. You might not, you might want to have them, once again, advise you not talk. You might not need it. The most powerful thing that you can do when you're advocating within the school for things for your kid right now is actually to make alliances with the teachers, administrators, and special ed resources in the school. And this can feel really difficult because it's easy to see them as the enemy that you're trying to get things from who aren't doing what you want. And the most powerful thing that you can do to be an effective advocate is to recognize that the teachers are on your team. Now, they don't have exactly the same knowledge, needs, limitations, or cares that you have. But if you can identify the shared problem that you're trying to solve and make sure that they know that you are on their team trying to solve their problems, it's much easier to convince them that they want to do what you want them to do. So part of how you do this is the shared problem that you are trying to solve is that they want to feel like an effective teacher. They want to feel like they have done well by all of the kids in their class. This means that when you go into that advocacy meeting, you are decentralizing your concerns and putting their concerns as part of what you are taking into consideration. You have specific concerns about your child. They have concerns about your child and a whole classroom. Things that I have seen happen a lot with parents advocating for gifted and twice exceptional kids is a lack of respect for teachers, a lack of respect for their expertise, a lack of respect for the fact that these teachers do generally care about doing a good job, a lack of respect for the structures that teachers are working under and the pressures that are on them, and compassion for the fact that teachers are not trained generally to work with gifted and twice exceptional kids. They get very little training unless they seek it out for themselves in most cases. So these children are threatening the teacher's sense of competence. And the teachers need to feel like they're in control of leading the classroom. And they need to feel safe enough to learn about your kid. So, anything positive that you see in the teacher and how hard they're working and what the needs are that they have in their classroom that you can share in that meeting gains you points and makes them want to do things for you. There's a great technique that I love to use when I'm working, sort of helping people negotiate with each other, that you can actually find ways to work with figuratively, even if you can't work with it physically. If you can get so that you're sitting on the same side of the table and not talking across the table at each other, it actually really helps. Being literally shoulder to shoulder makes you feel like you're side by side with somebody looking for a problem. And you can put a piece of paper on the table in front of you with some notes about the challenge that this kid has in class, whether they're disengaged or fooling around because they're bored, or whether they're not handing in their homework because they can't be bothered to do it because it's not interesting because it's the same thing that they knew 3 years ago, or because the handwriting issue is so overwhelming that they can't produce that much content. Whatever the issue is, if you can make notes in front of you about a possible solution that you're doing together, it's amazing. It can actually change the way you think about solving a problem. The image is, let's say this envelope is a symbol of the challenge. My child is not getting the education that they need because of something, or they're a behavior problem in class because of something. Imagine that you're holding one end and the teacher's holding the other, and put it out in front of you. Like, if you do this imaginatively and imagine that you're working together to solve that problem, it decreases your stress level. It decreases their stress level. And when your stress levels are decreased, everybody's creativity about how to solve the problem is maximized. This is actually how you get things done, is when people start trying to solve a problem rather than fighting with each other about, are we going to do it my way or your way? So I'm talking a lot about emotional intelligence here, because actually leading through persuasion is about relationship building and then inching things in the direction that you want them to go. So a couple of emotional intelligence tidbits that are worth just spending a little bit of time on. Don't be afraid of emotions. One of the things that happens to parents when they go into the school to talk about their kids is they're upset, they care. And for some of us, this ends up being, I'm going to cry in the meeting. And I don't want to cry in the meeting. I don't want to seem like I just can't handle this. I want to look like I know what I'm doing. For some of us, we have a tendency to get angry and forceful, and we don't want to be that person. Emotions are byproducts of what happens when we care. They just happen. If we defend ourselves against them, they get in the way, and we put extra effort into not being emotional that would serve us better if we took the same effort and applied it to being committed to working with these people to solve the problem at hand. What are you committed to more than your discomfort? What am I really committed to? What is the process I believe in? Use those tools to help you stay focused on solving the problem, and let the emotions wash over you if they do. They won't derail things. The other thing about emotional intelligence that's really important is avoiding toxic behaviors. There are 4 toxic behaviors. They happen when we're under threat, and so they have a tendency to show up in negotiation and advocacy on the things that we're really passionate about. And so here's another piece of emotional self-management that we need to do. The toxic behaviors are criticism, blaming. This is when we take something that's a complaint that we have about someone and we make it about who they are, rather than about the impact of a behavior. And so if we call a teacher unreasonable, we're in this land. If we tell a teacher, when you asked my child to do this thing, the impact on my child was that they felt disrespected because it felt beneath them because they'd been doing this work for 4 years and they wanted to be doing something that challenged them because they want to come to school to learn. That's different. That's separating the behavior from whether the teacher is competent or not, or a good person. Avoiding that criticism, a soft startup. I want to meet with you because I want to make sure that things are going well in your classroom. When is a good time? Just a soft startup. I want us to work together to solve this problem. Once again, soft startup, implied putting them on the team. Then facts. What are the specific things that happened? The observable facts. No interpretations, just what a fly on the wall would be able to see. If there was a video camera capturing things, what would the narrative description of what showed up on the video camera be? I statements or impact statements. What was the impact of those facts on, when we're talking about advocating for our kids, on the kid? What does the kid need? And then a request. So avoiding criticism, avoiding stonewalling. Stonewalling is a toxic behavior. Stonewalling is just, I don't want to deal with it. And it happens when we become emotionally flooded. And this is when we sort of step out of the conversation when it becomes too hard for us. And what we need to do to capture that is to soothe ourselves, to take care of ourselves. This is where excuse yourself to the bathroom and have a good cry might be what you need. Maybe just wash your face. Maybe just take 10 deep breaths. Maybe do your little gesture under the table. Something to bring yourself back to, I can engage now. Defensiveness, that's just when you defend yourself against criticism. So often when you're advocating for your kids, this is in the land of the teacher says, I'm doing this and you're not doing that. If you did that at school, at home, it would help. And but I am, but it's not being explained. There's defensiveness there. If you take responsibility for your part of the problem, if there's a piece of something that you weren't doing as much of as you think you could, own it, and that helps you talk about the facts more. And contempt is the killer. Contempt is the one that really, I mentioned it earlier, and it happens so often with people who are ineffective advocates. And it's this sense of us, them, and simply building a culture of appreciation. Simply noticing when they're trying, noticing when things are working, looking for the good And also being willing to look at the bad, but not making it about, I understand this child and you don't. Now, one of the challenges that people talk about a lot is teachers not respecting the expertise the parents have. One of the techniques that I have used myself in diffusing this is actually to name in meetings. You have expertise running a classroom. You have expertise in typical developmental patterns and a variety of teaching methods. I have experience of this child and teaching this child at home, and then put out the possibility that maybe this child is different to teach at home as at school, and ask for their, what do you see at home? And like, what do you see at school? Can I reconcile it with what I see at home? How can we put the bigger picture together based on each of our observations and expertise? When we get them as our allies, they're much more likely to want to do what we want them to do. Because actually, often teachers have to go to bat and administrators have to go to bat for our children with their supervisors in order to be able to do what we want done for our children. And so we need them to be our advocates. And they're going to do that much more effectively if they want to do it. This is one of the hardest parts of parenting and advocacy. We are constantly advocating with new people. Every new teacher is a new person. Every time there's a change of administration in the building, there's new people that we're dealing with. Every time there's a change in the curriculum from the people on high, there's a new thing. And we carry with us trauma from the bad experiences and a memory of bad experiences that we had with previous people. And we have to remember that every time there's a change, it's a new day, it's a new beginning. We have to go in giving people the benefit of the doubt, assuming a level of confidence and of competence and a level of good intent. Because if we don't go in assuming good intent and giving people the benefit of the doubt at the beginning, we come in defended against them already, and we can't even take in for ourselves what positive things they're bringing to the table. We don't even notice it. This is hard. This is where we need our friends and our self-soothing techniques and our self-care and our ideas of what are we committed to? What are the things we believe about process? That will get us so that we have the right mindset going in. Okay, so here we are 45 minutes into a talk about effective advocacy, and I have not talked about how do you actually have a negotiating conversation yet. And it's because all of that mental work, all of that attitude work, all of that how you think about it attitude is required for the strategic stuff to be effective. If you don't have a relationship where you're meeting them where they are and building a culture of trust and willingness to collaborate, it doesn't matter what you say or what you put on the table. They're going to be fighting against doing what you want, even if they can. Whereas if you're on the same page and you've made them feel safe, then you can have a conversation about what can actually be done. If you don't want to be that parent, all of the stuff I've already talked about is how you can walk into the school, fight hard for what your kids want, and not be seen as that parent. When you go into the school to talk about what your kid needs, spend time defining the problem. and figuring out where the points of alignment are between what you want for your kid and what the teachers and the schools see as their responsibility, want for their kids, want for your kid in particular, and how does meeting the need of your child fit with the meeting the needs of the whole school? Define the problem. Then look at the observable facts. What are the things that you can agree on that are just the behaviors that are happening, the mental health issues that seem to be showing up, the homework that's being done or not being done, the quality of engagement, the excitement, the sense of learning, the getting better at things? Look at the facts. The more you can get concrete about what is observable, the easier it is to identify the problem and see possible solutions. Then, research. You have almost certainly done lots of research about what you think your kid needs. You probably also have done some research about what's going on in the system and what the resources are in the system. Quick summaries of the research, plus I can give you this to back it up, goes a long way. A couple of articles to read about something they may not be familiar with goes a long way. Figure out what resources are convincing to them and present them with those. Don't present them with opinion blog posts when what they need is something from a psych ed publication. Just figure out what will be convincing to them and give them that. Then, a willingness to make suggestions and do brainstorming rather than demands for this particular thing go a long way. If there are things that you think are really crucial, make sure that the research that you bring backs them up. And what you really want to do is bring that to their awareness in a way that they can hear it, because you want them to think, okay, this is the solution to my problem. Letting them connect the dots once you've laid them out in front of them is much more powerful than laying out the dots and connecting them for them. Once they've done the connecting the dots themselves, they are bought in to that being a logical process. Have specific requests. If you've got specific things that you think would help, bring them clearly in a nicely articulated way. Agree on next steps. The way these advocacy projects work is you do a next step, you see how it lands, you do a next step, you see how it lands, you do a next step, you see how it lands. Don't try and have a pathway from here to here at the end of each meeting. Just come to we're willing to try this and see what information we gather from it. Because you don't know what the impact of that step is going to be, and the teachers in the school don't know. So patience about, let's try and implement something and see what something is. And then go back to the beginning again. What are the observable facts? What do we know? What other research might be useful to support this? How can we come up with a next step from here? And then this becomes an iterative process that you do over and over and over again with each specific problem as it arises. And what makes it possible to go in and keep doing this effectively is all of the work that you've already done about establishing the relationship. And by managing your own ability to show up in a way where you're looking to collaborate and persuade them from where they are to where you want them to be, rather than insisting that they jump to where you are right now. One of the things that goes a long way is recognizing and admitting that what you have are ideas and suggestions and not guaranteed solutions. Because if you are like, I figured out my kid and this is what my kid needs, what you've done is given them something to fight against. Whereas if you say, I think this is what my kid needs because this and this and this and this, and they follow your thinking, they're more likely to adopt your thinking. So a little humility and a little bit of willingness to not be committed to 100% this being the right solution. So before I go to sort of what questions do you have, the thing that really, it really is about relationship. And the thing that people worry about when they think about getting people as their allies is they think that this means they have to be a pushover and they have to say yes to what other people propose. And that's not true. Having this relationship-centered approach to advocacy makes it possible for everybody to stay in the conversation and not dislike each other while disagreeing. And if you can just know that what you are committed to is what is best for your child, and that you are willing to wrestle collaboratively with the other people involved without making them wrong or disrespecting them, that you can be on their team and still be very strong in saying, from what I know about my child, as documented by these reports from these professionals, that's not going to work. This study here shows that that tends to be ineffective with these kinds of children. And it suggests that an alternative is this. Can we try this? And if you're committed to that, and they say no, then you can be like, why not? What do we need to do to make something that's closer to what is recommended possible? And you can have your backbone. And if you know what your backup plan is, you can know, all right, anything that's going on in this setting that is better than my backup plan is worth sticking with. And as soon as it becomes clear that it's not better than my backup plan, I implement my backup plan. And if you know that with confidence and you're committed to it, you can stay in the disagreement while you're working on being persuasive without it being a place of discord. Because if it's a place of discord, it has a tendency to ripple out into the settings where it impacts your kid. So with that, are there questions? So Hazel said, how do we get information from the district? So this is a really interesting question. And it can be hard to get it from the district directly. You'll need to find the gifted coordinator and start asking lots of questions. And so once again, that's a place of building the relationship and asking. It takes typically picking up the phone and actually meeting with people. You might need to find, if there's a special ed council of some sort, if there are parents who are involved in PTA and that sort of thing, asking them. If there's any kind of local gifted parents association, asking for what resources they have that they know about the district. Advocating for the gifted side, it's all the same. It really is all the same. It's about identifying what are the things that you're seeing, what are the things that you are seeing that indicate that your child is not getting the learning experience, that they're not benefiting from the education. Looking at those facts, what can you see? What can you point to? What can you demonstrate? And then finding out what the real limitations are and finding out what possibilities there are. And it's about being involved in those conversations, and it takes time. Any other questions? You can, okay. All right. I hope that you got useful information here that will help you. If you have further questions for me, let me just get my screen back up. So here are places that you can find me online. Links to resources for twice exceptionality. That is something that I have a bit of a document for. My resources are currently a little bit out of date, to be perfectly honest. So Jen and Chris, do you have any places that you are pointing people to right now for general resources?
Basically, the places I've been sending people as of late, still Hoagie's. It's some of the links are broken, but most of the stuff on the top of the pages is up to date. Hoagie's is a good site. SANG, Supporting the Emotional Needs of the Gifted. I think it's sanggifted.org is the website. That has a lot of information about 2E and research and stuff that you can use for IEPs. I know the Center for, the Gifted Development Center, which is gifteddevelopment.org, I believe, has quite a few articles and resources and things you can use, especially on Twice Exceptional, especially on visual spatial learners, of which we have one, and things you can use for IEPs. NAGC has some stuff. NAGC tends to be, or I'm sorry, the National Association for Gifted Children tends to be more directed towards educators and researchers and academics, although the resources that are there are definitely open to parents and are useful if you kind of know what you're looking for and kind of how to read educationese.
Yeah, those resources can be really useful. If you can figure out which ones are good for your kid, they can be super useful to take into schools.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things I've been meaning to do forever is put together some up-to-date resources on 2E and advocacy, giftedness, parenting gifted, self-care. I just don't have enough hours in the day. I haven't gotten to. I've been meaning to for months. So Hoagie's, NAGC, SANG, and Gifted Development Center are probably your best resources right now.
And I would add the Davidson Institute also.
I would go there, yeah.
Yeah, because Davidson has some good stuff on 2E. And also I'm going to put my dissertation link in the chat box here.
Oh, excellent.
There's a lot of references at the end for papers on twice exceptionality that might be useful. So I thought I'd throw that up too.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Part of the challenge with resources for these kids is that each kid is so unique.
Oh my God,
The
yeah.
resources that are right for your kid are going to be different than the resources that are useful for lots of other kids. And so what tends to happen is conglomerations of various documents in places that it's hard to point to specific documents without knowing the specifics of your kid, which is why the places that we're pointing to are places that aggregate things over time. And your friend is any search feature on their website and putting in the issue that you're concerned about, plus their names in a general search engine to pick up what spiders have caught from interior to their websites. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Alrighty.
Oh, there's another question also. References that can be used in IEPs or resources. I'm sorry, I'm going blind.
Yeah, same thing.
Right.
IEPs, again, are so incredibly individualized. And granted, a lot of IEPs tend to, it's like a fill in the blank form practically. I'm a teacher now, so I get them sent to me. And as I read through them to prepare for the students in my class, I notice that basically it's answering this question, filling in this block. So if you know what kind of information is going to be on an IEP, you kind of know maybe what to ask for or look for. But they are so individualized that resources for those are probably going to be the same as any resources and research that you find for gifted or twice exceptional kids. Pull out of there the information that you see you deem most relevant in your situation, and put your personal needs connected with that resources or those resources, and that's going to help you the best. You want to make the best argument for an IEP based on the research you have, plus the completely unique, nobody's ever seen this before kind of kid that you have. I've had that kid, still have that kid.
I've got 4 of those.
Oh, yeah, we all have that kid.
Right? Like we all have that kid.
Right. So you want to pull it all together as best you can. I mean, there's not going to be anything out there that is specifically 100% for your child, because that's just not possible.
Yeah. This does sort of bring me a point that I didn't make in this, but one of the things that I hear parents of gifted and twice exceptional kids say that I know makes teachers cringe is, my child is unique. Because yes, your child is unique, but good teachers recognize the things that are unique about all of the children in their class. And so it's not actually a useful word to use. It's better to talk about, my child is unusually complex. I realize this puts extra challenges into play, because that is much more accurate than my child is unique. It's that the level of complexity is greater, and it's a way of honoring how teachers who care about their students see their classes.
Yep. All right, I think that's about it. Kate, any further last words, or are we good here?
No, I think the last words are that this stuff is hard, and let's not make it harder for ourselves by fighting any more than we have to. If we can find a way to create ease around the process, then it becomes hard work and not so personal. And that's not easy. So turn to your friends and your support network and ask for help. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to vent and ask for help, because this stuff is hard.
Alrighty, thank you everyone for coming today. Our next webinar will be announced online and in various places once we reschedule it because of me. So we will be letting you know what will be rescheduled. I believe the topic is being the GUI center of the sandwich generation, basically managing gifted elders and also gifted kids at the same time. A lot of people are in this time of their life right now. It's all kinds of fun. And so I'll be presenting on that sometime later this fall. And Chris, I believe, is going to do something on exceptionalities or something. My memory fails me because it's Friday afternoon. So anyway, I hope everyone is well and have a great weekend. We will see you at our next webinar.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.